Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Untitled Chapter and I'm so excited to bring you the first episode of our training course. Now this training course is not, what you probably have heard about training courses for Excel, or you've probably been through one yourself. I'm not going to be showing you hacks and tips and keyboard shortcuts and push the button here, push the button there. This course is more about giving you a recipe to kind of find your own way later on without needing to every time find out how to do something. So if you have a problem that you would like to solve in Excel, I will give you a recipe so you know where to start and how to organize your data. So I'm changing your mindset. What I'm hoping to achieve is transform the way you work with Excel at the moment, okay? And the keyword that I would like you to kind of keep in your head is most of the issues we face when we work with Excel, and this is kind of the confusion that a lot of people have, is how to organize my data in such a way that I can use all this, features in Excel to kind of come up with the solution that I want. And it stands the test of time, okay? So without further ado, let's start. So why this training course? We gave a little bit of an introduction on the first slide. So Excel is a sandbox, okay? And when you open it, you get this vast, canvas that you're free to create whatever you'd like on it. The challenge most of the time is where to start in how to kind of make Excel do the work for you and come up with a solution that you're after, okay? And this is where the challenge is, okay? So it's since it's a sandbox, it needs creators, to make something, worth noticing, something like a work of art. And work of art doesn't necessarily be, painting. It could be, something that actually works every time, something that stands the test of time. All those things you need to keep in mind, okay? So the challenge with Excel, it can feel sometimes like a maze if you don't have a clear workflow. And the lack of proper workflow results in a badly designed Excel sheets most of the time. And we've seen those Excel sheets. We've all been victims to those Excel sheets. You open Excel sheet, it's big and it's full with numbers with, wrong formatting and inconsistent formatting, and a lot of bright colors and a lot of cells that contains numbers that nobody knows what they do, So all of those things, kind of make you feel that, okay, this is not good. This is a really badly designed Excel sheet. And even if you do it yourself, and then after a month or two, maybe when you come back to the file, you kind of forget, okay, what did I mean by doing this? So what I'm trying to kind of teach you in this course is how to make your workflow that whenever you go back, you always remember, okay, what did I do there? Okay. All right. So clarity is important, and you need clarity, and without having the proper workflow, without understanding things like data structure, how to organize your data, how to separate it, how to make standard formatting, how to be consistent in how you present your numbers and things like that, you'll have clarity. So every time you kind of face a new problem, you know how to analyze it. You kind of ask yourself, okay, I should do this. I know what I want to record is this, so I can get later on a report that show me that, for example. Okay, we're going to see that in action once we get going. All right, so because of all this, most of the training course here, and this is what I would like you to take out of this training course, is using Excel without a background of data structure and some principles of database design makes Excel really hard, and it kind of makes you confused every time you start using Excel. You don't know how you record what you're trying to record. So you can use it later on to produce some reports, okay? And that confusion is going to go on and on and on every time, okay? And that's why most of the badly designed spreadsheet that we see is the lack of that knowledge, okay? So looking at the agenda of what's going to be coming in the next episodes, Module 1, which is the data structure, is what we're going to be starting with. And if there is something that I would like you to take from this training course is this module, okay? And this module may take about 5 episodes, I would imagine. There's another module, which is about some skills that I think everyone needs to have and harness. But that's going to be coming up later after we finish Module 1. So looking at the Module 1, which is data structure. So we're going to first start with understanding your data. This is basically guiding you through how to think about what you want to create, because you need to have a clear idea of what you want to create. So I'm going to give you some things to kind of navigate you through that. Data types, we're going to look at how Excel stores data, in what way, okay? And then we're going to look at data formats, which is the different ways Excel can display your data, and those can be infinite. And then we're going to look at date and time format, and the reason we're going to be looking at date and time format because they are very important when you work with Excel. A lot of the data that we work with, we analyze sometimes, is related to date and time. Okay, and then we're going to be, up to the date and time format, this is what we're going to be covering today. So the first 4 bullet points. And then the next episode, we'll be covering table types, where we look at flat tables and cross tables. And basically, this is what you're going to be seeing in your whole life, probably. Organizing and structuring your data, and then this is where we look at some of the principles of database design and why that is important when you work with Excel to solve a certain problem. And then we're going to look at the different ways Excel look at your data. So Excel looks at your data either a table or a range. So we're going to see what the difference between the two. And then we're going to be learning everything we need to learn about producing reports with pivot tables, and what are the prerequisites and what you need to have before you engage with using pivot tables. Okay? Understanding your data. So the first thing you need to look at, what are you creating? You need to ask yourself that. So usually when you open Excel, you want to do something. So what is that something? And basically think about, about the finished product. So when you work with Excel, you will be most of the time designing one of these 3 things. So either you're going to be designing a calculator where you just run a quick calculation and you don't need to track anything over time and no history is required. Or you will be designing a template that gets filled out and then printed and maybe at some point be combined to produce some reports. Or you will be designing a full-fledged entry system with the ability to track things, over time and also produce reports at your leisure. The other thing you need to think about when you start designing your data, and in order to understand it, is think about, okay, is this data that I'm using, is it static or dynamic? And that was going to help you design, kind of arrive at what's the best solution to create. So static data is basically just like something like a nameplate, some sort of a catalog, or a very slowly moving data, like an employee table. Dynamic is something really dynamic related to time, and it's some sort of events, that happens daily, maybe like some sort of transactions that you're having in a retail store. Okay. The other thing you need to really look into is where your data is coming from. So once you design what you're trying to design, where is your data coming from? So are you going to be doing it as a manual entry, and this is where you have full control, or it's coming from someone else, and this is where most of the time you will be required to cleanse the data and also do some transformation sometimes before you can use it to come up with the solution. Okay? Or you're getting data from a database, and by a database I mean here also any other structured, data source, like a web page, a table that is formatted correctly, and things like that. And most of the time when this happens, you don't really need to clean the data that much. You don't need to transform it that much. And the last thing you need to think about is what outputs are you planning to produce, So, and that goes back to what you are designing, So if you're designing an entry system, you will be looking more often at some reports that you'd like to produce on request, or monthly, weekly, quarterly, things like this. And sometimes you will be required to do some comparison over time, so year over year, month over month, or sometimes you need to do some growth analysis. Okay, so how are we improving, And so a lot of these things that go under the umbrella of data analysis. Data types and data formats. Data type is basically how Excel stores data. Data format is how Excel display that data. Okay, so the analogy that I always like to make is a store. So every store has some sort of a storage, right? And it has a storefront where the goods are displayed in an attractive way, right? Or for people to actually have an idea what this product is. So the way your merchandise is stored in the store, this is the data type. And the way it's been displayed on the storefront, this is your data format. So always keep that distinction in mind, because when you see something not formatted correctly, you know that the problem is not your data, the problem is the format chosen to display that data. And this is really a very good, distinction that you always need to be aware of, because it happens quite often and people get confused and they don't know what to do, especially when it comes to date and time formats, as we're going to see a little bit later on. The two things, or the two ways Excel stores data, it's going to be either a number or a text. And this distinction you need to be really aware of, because when you mix between the two, or accidentally you define a number as a text, sometimes you lose some of the accuracy of your calculation. Okay, so let's take, for example, dates. If you have dates and some of them were not formatted correctly in a way that Excel understands that this data is actually dates, and you would like to do some sort of a calculation to calculate the sales after a certain date, and one of those dates is not correct, what you're going to end up with is a wrong calculation. And this is why you need to kind of be aware of the data type, of how the data is being stored in Excel. Now, as we're going to see a little bit later on, is date and time is stored in Excel as a number, and it's very important to make sure that your date and time column, which could be sometimes a very long column, you need to make sure that all dates are understood correctly as dates in Excel. So you need to make sure that they are actually stored as numbers. So we're going to see that a little bit more in detail in the next slide. So what I would like you to take from this slide is data type is how Excel stores data. Data format is how Excel displays that data. Date and time format. Date and time are stored in Excel as a number, and for any date, it has a serial number. And that serial number is actually counting the days since January 1st, 1900. And if you take a date and time like the one you see here, 16th of May, 2016, 1 p.m., is stored in Excel as, as you can see there, 42,506.5417. Now the whole number here represents the date. So the whole number here represents, the serial number for 16 of May 2016. The fraction here represents the time, and the fraction is fraction of 1 day. So 0.54, which is slightly over 0.5, which is half a day, represents 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. When you have zero fractions in a serial number that refers to a certain date, means that the time is actually midnight, or the data represents date only. And if you have the whole number as 0, this means that what you're actually referring to here is only time, and you're not associating the date with it. And even if you transform it to a date, you will get January 0, which doesn't exist, of course. Now, because dates are numbers in Excel, that's why we can actually do some mathematical calculation on it. We can find out how many days between two dates. We can actually, do some other calculations that classifies days, for example, or in a certain manner. Okay, so you can do some mathematical comparisons. This is what I'm after here. All right. So this is our last slide for today. Let's move on now to some practical examples. Okay, so this table here shows the numbers that you have here in this column, and this is the general format, and the general format is basically no specific format being applied to the number. Okay, and then you have the different other formats. So you have number, you have currency, you have accounting for the same numbers. And this is what I meant by format is unlimited, while storing the data is kind of limited. Okay, so you have the same numbers here displayed in two different ways. Okay, you can also convert the same numbers here to dates. Okay, just by choosing a different format for the numbers. Okay, the time is something different here. So we're just choosing some random times here. Percentage. So there are a lot. You have fraction. You have scientific. There's also some phone numbers you can use. There's a format for that, and then at the end here there is something that you will learn later on, and we also have a video to it. Probably we're not going to repeat it. So it's custom formatting. Okay, so for example, this is accounting formatting. So, and then what we did here for the total, we applied a custom format. We added, as you can see here, there's a text here says total. Okay, which you think probably is going to make this a text, but it's not, because the total here is actually included in the custom format code. Okay, so as you can see here, we have total, and then we have the star here, which tells Excel to repeat what's coming after it, which is a space, and then the number format that we're going to use. So the importance of custom formatting is you can actually direct your audience when they start interacting with your Excel solution. You can direct them in certain ways to make things easier for them to understand. So there are some issues that I would like to investigate here with you. So let's take, for example, when you write a number, what happens? So if we say 1, 2, 3, 4, this is a number, and we hit enter, you see immediately that the number was aligned to the right without us interfering. As you can see here, aligned right is not used, aligned left is just no alignment been used. But even though the number was aligned to the right, and this is because numbers make sense when you have them aligned to the right. You can immediately find out, okay, the correct placing for each number. Okay, and you can compare, tens to hundreds to thousands, and you can see immediately which number is the biggest. Okay. Now, if you write a text, and let's say we write data, and let's write Excel, and you can see that the text was aligned to the left, although we didn't interfere with the alignment options here. Okay. Now, the interesting thing, what happens when you write a date? Okay. So if we take today's date, May 19th, 2019, and you don't need to write 2019 if the date you're entering is in the current year. Okay, so what happened when we enter the date here? The date was aligned to the right without us choosing any alignment options. This means that the date was understood by Excel in the right way. Okay, and it was aligned to the right because it is actually a number. So any date you write is going to be aligned to the right if it has been understood by Excel that this is a date. Now, what happens if you put a wrong date? So let's say if we think that our system is using some other different format, and we write, instead of May 19th, we write the 19th first. So we put the date first, the day first, and then we put the month, and then we put the year. To some people, this date format is correct, okay? But for what I'm using in my system here, this is not recognizable. And this is why when I hit enter, it gets aligned to the left, which means that Excel did not understand this date that I enter. And when it didn't understand it as a date, it thought that, okay, this is a text. And this is why this date, or what we think was a date, was aligned to the left, because Excel thinks it's a text. So this is the distinction you need to kind of keep in your mind always, that if whatever you're entering, is aligned to the right, this means that Excel understood it as a number. If it was aligned to the left, then Excel thinks that this is a text. Okay. Now there's something you can apply to make sure that this is correct. You can use a function called type. Now the function called type is going to give you 1 for a number. If the value is a number, it's going to give you 2 if it's a text, if it's a logical value, 4, and so on and so forth. Okay, but what we're looking after is basically, is it a number or a text? Okay, so we take this, and as you can see here, Excel identified this as a number. That's why it gave us 1. And if you apply it to everything here, you can see that, okay, this is a number. 2, okay, these 2 are text. And then, oh, look at this. The dates that were identified by Excel in the right way and recognized by Excel as dates, they were actually identified as a number in the data type function. Okay, so any date that you use, you can apply this function to kind of see, especially when you have a lot of dates, a column that's full of, say, 100, maybe 1000 dates. So you can apply this function and find out if you have some wrong dates lurking in there. And then you can see the last one, which was not recognized by Excel. Excel thinks it's a text, and that's why it aligned it to the left. So I think this is what I wanted to kind of show you for today. This is just a start. This is just to give you some, warming up. In the next few episodes, we're going to be looking more deeper into data structure, how to organize your data. And, we're going to take some real examples, that you can help you understand why organizing your data in the right way is really important. So thank you for tuning in for this episode, and hope to see you on the other episodes as well. And please stick with me, you will find it worth it in the end. Thank you so much.